What is up, everybody? We are live on the PokerNews Podcast with one of my absolute favorites, the man that is Ryan LaPlante. Ryan, I feel like every time we talk, I end up with a wealth of knowledge, and you're just very articulate in a lot of elements of poker. And so I was not surprised to find another incredible blog that you've written that I think was really insightful into something that a lot of people in the poker community have been discussing in the last few weeks. So let's just jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about your inspiration for writing this blog and your perspective after, a decade in poker.
So, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for those kind words. I also really appreciate that. So I was following a debate. I mean, there's always a debate on Twitter and poker, but I felt as though that this one was particularly interesting and important in terms of with the World Series just around the corner. Everyone, for the most part, during the summer, they have to sell action. If you want to be able to play a really, really big summer, like, for instance, I personally am playing, I sold for $250,000 in buy-ins. And, when you're playing that big of a summer, you need to be able to sell action, or you need to have a ridiculously big bankroll. Like, for me to play exactly what I'm playing this summer fully on my own dime, I'd want $2 million plus bankroll, which is just unrealistic. However, selling action is a very normal part of the general poker economy. In fact, the poker economy, it really runs around poker buying, action, and selling, and swaps, and all that kind of stuff. And so the debate was centered around whether or not someone was making a, generally fair package, and, whether or not they were offering a good deal. And I personally am more along the line of thinking that it is the market should decide and let the buyer beware. And that being said, I also believe that I, as a seller, and other sellers and buyers have various responsibilities. So I wrote a piece and tweeted it and posted on Facebook and all that kind of stuff about, what I think is generally required as a seller, and, generally what I personally look for when I'm buying action. So I've been buying and selling action the entire length of my career. I've been playing poker professionally for the last 10 years, and without buying and selling action, I would not be a poker professional. I've helped run stables, full large backing stables. I've been backed my entire career. I've sold action my entire career, and I do lots of piece buying. And on top of that, I'm now also managing a piece buying and stable right now as well, on top of everything else that I do. So I am in the mix of it on both sides. I sell a lot and I buy a lot. And I think that gives me a good perspective as far as what is important for each side of the aisle. And I'm also really good friends with, buyers who have been very, very successful for over long time periods. A friend of mine who is a longtime buyer of mine is one of the most successful piece buyers around, and buys a ton of action. So I know what it takes to be profitable in these games as a buyer, and I know what buyers are looking for. And that's why I decided to write this piece. I also thought that some of the arguments that they were making for or against, what this guy was selling, weren't necessarily the right type of arguments. Because for me, especially with a lot of quote unquote streamers, celebrities, vloggers, yada yada, I feel as though when they sell action that, a lot of people aren't buying to make a profitable investment. When I'm buying and when most of my friends buy, we're looking for good, profitable investments, right? It is not a gamble for us. We don't want to sweat. Maybe we want to sweat to some degree, but, we want good buys, right? So because we want good buys, and because that's what we're focusing on, it's, we're really studying and doing our research. But, most of the most common buyer isn't doing that stuff. They're not necessarily looking for profitable investments. They're hoping they're getting profitable investments, or that they're just piece buy runs good, which, that's a reasonable thing to do. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with playing the game for fun, nothing wrong with investing for fun. But that being said, I feel as though that there are some pitfalls that recreational buyers can fall into. And I feel as though that some streamers can either intentionally or unintentionally take advantage of these recreational buyers. And I wanted to discuss it from that type of perspective as well, because I've sold action as I've streamed, and done things like that. I generally just sell privately to smaller groups because it's so much easier tax wise and that kind of stuff. But I do occasionally sell publicly, and I think when you are selling publicly, as to Joe Schmo buyer and Jane Schmo buyers, that you're making sure that you're very realistic and honest about what the likely outcome is and in terms of what your edge is. So let's say you're going to sell at a markup that you think is high. I view nothing wrong with that. I think that is completely okay to do as long as you are upfront about what you're doing. For instance, not to call him out, but honestly, I thought it was ridiculous. Helmuse, when he sold last year to the Super Turbo Bounty at 1.6, I think that that is absurd and predatory. I don't know if he knew it was predatory, but I mean, he has to be so completely unaware and uninformed to not know that it is predatory. And the reason why I say it's predatory, because there is no one in that field that is above a 60% ROI. Yet when he sold it, he didn't say, hey guys, have a sweat. This is a gamble. This isn't a profitable investment for you. Just buy a piece, have a piece of, one of the greats. He didn't say that. He said, buy a piece of me, and then like bragged about his stats and stuff, and very strongly implied that it was a profitable investment. And he might have even said that it was outright. That's when I take issue with people selling. It's not that you can't charge a high markup or shouldn't. It's that when you do, that you are very upfront that that is what you're doing. That's, for me, that is part of the buyer beware. And part of the market dictating, if no one wants to buy, then okay, sure, that's fine. If you post it really high, it doesn't sell, that's on you. But what's also on you is, when these uninformed people who are fans of the game and want to buy a piece, when you're telling them that it is a profitable investment, or you are, indirectly implying that it is a profitable investment, then you are effectively maybe not scamming them, but you're acting in a very unethical manner. And I think that it is part of your responsibility to these people to at least be, ethical. And that's the only time I ever have issue with someone selling. If someone just like posts a package and says, hey guys, this is what I'm selling to, and they don't say anything else about it being a good buy or profitable or an investment, whatever they want to sell it, I think is fairly reasonable. But when they're a public persona in poker, they do things like stream, they're a very well-known person, and they're selling to the general public, I think they need to go a step further than that when they sell. Because, when they are that public persona and when they are very, open about everything and they are an ambassador for the game, I feel as though that they owe it to the rest of the community to behave in an ethical fashion. And I think, going that little extra step and saying, that it is a gamble, that it might not be a profitable investment, things like that, that it is, just have a fun piece. I don't think it'll diminish Helmuth's, propensity to be able to sell to something like that. So many people are such big fans of him that he could have posted at 1.6 and then done it ethically, and I would have been completely and totally okay with it, and it would have sold out immediately. So it doesn't take much extra effort to, to sell at higher markups and do so in a very ethical fashion. And, as someone that wants to be in this industry, that I've already been in this industry for, 10 plus years, and I plan on being in it, for many, many, many years longer, that I feel as though that behaving in this type of fashion to the best of my, to the best of my degree isn't just like good for those buying action in me now and stuff. It's also good for myself long term, because the better people view me as an ethical person, the easier it is for me to sell longer down the road. So if you're someone who is in that type of, situation where you can sell now and you can sell at fairly high markups, as long as you do it in an ethical fashion and as long as you're very upfront and open about it, I feel as though that that's what's going to be best for you long term, but also for the community.
I couldn't agree more. And it's so funny because actually last week, in speaking about Phil Hellmuth, that was exactly what I was saying, is that actually Phil Hellmuth is one of the only times I've ever seen it where I feel like he has such a big public that would jump on board, and it's a little bit more unfair than the people, I think some of these streamers, if their homies want to buy the action, let them do it. But you mentioned that first of all, I also have to say, I have to shout out to Donna and Jason and Aaliyah, and you have Matt, Kevin, lots of people in the chat giving you love and saying that they're big fans of yours. And so
Thanks,
I got to
everybody.
just tell them that you're loving them. And so for those out there who are, I think this is actually a part of the game that people are really uncomfortable about talking about. And it's really difficult for people who, even who have been in the industry for a while, to figure out, what are ways to buy action when you are going outside of just your close friend group. So are there sites, first of all, and also, a few tips that you would give to new buyers as to how to figure it out?
So the main sites that people use, so first of all, social media, of course. But besides for that, 2+2 forums is generally one of the main places to go to buy and sell action. It was a lot bigger in the marketplace section under there in the past years. Used to be a lot bigger than what it is currently. A lot more people buying and selling, but it's still like one of the main ways that even I go and check to see where people are posting. And I still post packages and stuff there as well, because most of the long-term large buyers, most of the long-term buyers and larger buyers are used to using 2+2 forums, and that's where they expect a lot of pros to go. So if you are a serious seller and a serious buyer and aren't planning on charging, ridiculous markup, and are just looking to sell a good package and to have people who are intelligent investors willing to buy good packages, that is the best place to go to. Outside of that, if you are a professional looking to join a site that has I do have a deal with this site as a forewarning. I wore patch for them during the last World Series. In return, they, gave me a special offer, give me a good deal in return. So I am technically represented by them, but as Stake Kings, the nice thing for buyers is that not everyone can sell on Stake Kings. You must first get approval by them. So they do, background check on you in terms of making sure that you are who you say to be, that they only really allow professionals or personalities to sell action. So they do some due diligence for buyers in terms of making sure that their people that are on there aren't going to be scammers or anything like that. Outside of that, they don't really do much due diligence in making sure that people sell at reasonable rates. So definitely buyer beware on the site, but I've certainly have seen some very profitable buys on there. It is a nice thing for pros where if you do have that more public persona and you want to get set up on there, one of the main reasons why I do like using them outside of the deal that I have with them is they handle taxes and stuff. And taxes for small piece buying makes it very, very difficult to justify selling even to 1% buys. But since they handle all the taxes and stuff, for a lot of the ones on there, if you want, you can set it to no minimum buy. So if someone, in fact, right now, I actually have packages on there for my low stakes, my high stakes, and for my 50K, where you can buy for as little as $1. Wow. Which, there's no other way to buy a piece of me for that small of a for that small. Yeah. That's one of the upsides of Stake Kings. There's also UStake, which is pretty similar to Stake Kings. I think their pricing for how people buy and sell is a little bit different. They might pass on the cost instead of to the staker to buyers, while Stake Kings pass on the cost to the people selling action. So usually for Stake Kings, they charge a percentage of whatever you sell. They just take a couple piece off. So then most people will sell at a slightly higher piece to make up for it. But both of those sites are good ways for recreational buyers to buy pieces of professionals, buy pieces of personalities, and I feel as though that if you want to be a more informed investor, that 2+2 will in general have better deals, but most of the best deals on the site tend to sell out pretty quickly. But also on 2+2, it is very much so buyer beware, where 2+2 does no background checks, no anything really. They had set a very low bar to be able to post on there, and of people getting scammed in that type of spot, It's, selling on a site like 2+2, or, people buying action sites like 2+2 is one of the most common types of places. Any of the general forums that have a very low bar to be able to buy or sell, it's very much so an opportunity for there to be scamming and things like that. I personally have never been scammed because I am exceptionally careful with who I buy action in, who even I sell action in. I tend to be pretty careful with that as well. Yeah, so I think those are like the main options are forums like 2+2, Pocket Fives, I think might have a small section as well. And then sites like Stake Kings and UStake, and then social media.
I love it. All the good ones. Well,
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about two things I want to talk to you about. In fact, I know
Yep.
that you do coaching, and of course, you
Yep.
have a bracelet in PLO. You also
Yep.
play lots of other games. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to talk a little bit as we get closer to the World Series. I want to talk a little bit about how people should prepare for the World Series, one in terms of coaching and
Yep.
studying, and then also in terms of, I know Daniel tweeted recently about sort of changing his schedule. The schedule is
Mm-hmm.
changing every year, and
Right.
whether or not you're going for Player of the Year or not, it's still important to know where you're finding your value. So what are
Right.
some things you would tell people, and also where they can find you should they want to get coaching from you?
So first of all, if you're looking for value this summer, go to Kenny Hallaert, Spacey FCB's Twitter, and at the pin to the top of his Twitter is a spreadsheet that has these schedules for the WSOP, the Win, the Venetian. I'm looking at it right now. Planet Hollywood, Aria, Golden Nugget, Binions, and the Orleans. It has a schedule for all of those for dates going between May. Goes all the way back to May 13th and goes all the way down to July 28th. So it gives you the full stretch of everything coming up, starting in a couple of weeks and ending at the very end of July. On top of that, it says start time, when the late reg ends, what game it is, what bind it is, and then on top of that, it even has a rake section. There's these tabs on the bottom where it shows the rake of each thing, shows what the bind is, well, what the percent they charge is, shows, let's see here. You can also look at it in a list form, which is to some might be a little bit easier to view it all in once in one little spot. And then on top of that, it also has a section in list form where it's only showing you the mix games. So you just want to play mix this summer, it has it listed by just by that as well, saying what type of mix it is. It has a section for Hold'em, mix that, short deck and things like that. It has a section for Omaha that shows PLO, 08, by date, where at, buy-in, for draw, for stud, for general mix, so like 8 games and that kind of stuff. Ladies events and seniors event has it split by all of those. So if you're looking for value and you're looking for like the different kinds of rakes and that kind of stuff, that is the best place to go. On top of that, for every single WSOP event, you can click on it and it will take you to the structures sheet as well. You want to see like what the structure looks like, you can do that there as well. And then on top, it also links you to where for each one, when you click on what the name is and stuff, you can go to the homepage of the site that lists all the tournaments. And then for like the Win, the Venetian, we'll have their structures and stuff there.
Wait,
So if
what
you want
did
to
he
do the
do this
research, that
for?
is everything
That
there.
must have taken him an
I can't
eternity.
hear you right now.
Oh shit. Sorry, I muted myself. So you don't hear me when I'm clicking and commenting on our chat people. But what I mean, that must have taken him ages. What was he doing that for? Just as a favor?
Every single year.
Wow, he's
He
such a
does it.
boss.
He asks for, donation. And I think he even donates the money that he gets.
Dude, he's such a
Yeah.
boss. Okay, cool. Well, I put that in the Twitter. So first of all, thank you so much for I feel like I need that. So thank you so much for that.
In fact, yeah, I don't accept any donations for myself for creating the schedule. I do support Reg Charity. You can help me by donating to them, and then has a link to them.
Oh,
So it
amazing.
has everything. He does it entirely for free, and if you want to do a thank you, he has you donate to Reg Charity.
Amazing. So amazing.
Kenny. So that if you want a value hunt for the summer, this is how I've helped build God, I've already helped build like 10 different full summer schedules for people with helping them value hunt and doing things like that. And I, of course, built my own schedule using this. And, what you should play is so person dependent. But the one thing that I say for sure is whatever you're going to play, be comfortable with losing every dollar you invest. If over the course of the summer you're building a package and, think about what you want to play, whatever your side of the investment is, be completely okay with losing every dollar. Like I personally have had a lot of really good summers. In fact, the last 3 summers at the World Series, I've averaged making more than one final table, and I've averaged cashing like 14 times or something like that, or maybe 12 times or whatever. Yeah, each summer on average, which means I've done very, very, very well. But on top of that, what I'm playing for the summer, what I sell outside of my backers and stuff, whatever I'm investing and my backers are investing, I'm expecting to lose every dime still, even though I've shown that I consistently do very well. The amount of variance in this game is insane, and also my package is large. I think it's I think across everything it's 150 entries or something like that. So obviously I don't plan on playing all 150, but even if I played 75, which is a pretty normal number for me, around 75 total entries, if I had 5 min caches over those 75 entries, it would not surprise me. Variance in this game is so, so, so massive, and it is by far the most important for you to accept that, realize that, and know that even if you have an insanely large edge and you do the best value hunting that you possibly can during the summer, you're still pretty likely to just lose every single dollar that you invest. That's just the nature of tournaments. And so because of that, that's number one. Number two, just pay attention to rate, pay attention to structures, pay attention to games that you think, might be a little bit bigger in terms of field size. Anything that has a larger field size and a better structure and a lower rate, probably going to be better value. That being said, there might be some hidden gems. Some of the smaller fields might actually be some of the best value for that price point. Like events at the Aria, events at the Golden Nugget, events at Binions, events at the Orleans, some of the Planet Hollywood events. Like some of these might not have the best structures, and they also might not have the lowest rake, but what they do have is a lot of pros skip them. Like I personally, when I'm playing, like I built my summer grind mostly around the Rio and the Win. That's like, and mostly around the Rio. So people like me oftentimes are mostly Rio hunting, Win hunting, or even places like Venetian for bigger guarantees or Planet Hollywood, which means any of the smaller stuff or any of the little one-day stuff will probably have the lowest percentage of good pros in it and the highest percentage of recreational players. So it might not always necessarily be the best structure or the best rake. For instance, 5K at the World Series is going to be one of the best rakes of the summer. It also is going to be one of the better structures of the summer. But that is, and those fields get pretty big, but those tournaments are still very difficult. So it's not always about, what is the best structure or rake. It's mostly about where are the pros going to play, and also what fits your own personality and schedule and desires. For most people, it'd probably be best for them to play a mixture of, the non-WSOP stuff outside of the big, really big guarantees and stuff. Play a bunch of the Win stuff, some Venetian, Planet Hollywood, Aria, any of the side stuff with like smaller fields, cut back on the variance a bit, and then do stuff like play some of the bigger guaranteed satellites and play cash games. Like for most people, that would be the best way to have a somewhat low variance summer that cuts back a bit for firing the really large fields and be a lot more likely to have a profitable summer. If you do it the way that I do, which is try to win a bracelet and try to play the big guarantees outside of that, I'm not that likely to have a profitable summer. If I profit more than half the time, that would definitely be on the high end, honestly. And it's just because I'm playing, some tough events. I'm playing some very high variance events. I'm playing lots of really large fields. And, when the only way I can really have a legitimately profitable, consistent summer is by making either a final table or lots of deep runs or cashing a very high percentage, all of those are pretty rare. Cashing above 30%, pretty rare. Making a final table, pretty rare. And then if I do final table, I could take eighth in something and have a losing summer yet. So I'm doing it the high variance way, but I also cut that variance. And the reason why I do it the high variance way is because I sell a ton of action. And by doing that, by cutting the variance with for myself and for my backers, I'm able to game select in the high variance manner. If I wasn't selling a ton of action, and I would have to focus on doing the opposite, which is playing the smaller fields, playing the softer fields, playing the better structures, playing the better rakes, and ignoring the stuff that the ego in me really wants to be able to battle and play in and win bracelets and that kind of stuff. And I know I'm doing it like that, but by knowingly doing it like that, I go the opposite route and I sell a ton of action and cut my own variance and cut my backers in variance. You have to find that middle ground. If you want to fully own dime or shot take harder, then go value hunt. You want to play bigger fields and play the bigger variance stuff, sell action. Can't sell action, you're stuck value hunting. Or being kind of irresponsible. And that's, if people want to be irresponsible and they want to really shot take, by all means the summer's best time to do it, but know that you're taking on that risk and that you could very easily lose every dollar you invest.
Well, in terms of someone who, obviously has been successful, has had a bracelet, knows how to prepare themselves for the summer, in terms of people who maybe, if this is their first or second or third early summers, do you recommend getting coaching? Do you recommend just getting out there and playing all the time? What's the best way to prepare, you think?
So I think the best way to prepare is to pick up to join a training site like Raise Your Edge if you can afford the more expensive ones, the Upswing Masterclass if you can afford that. Or if you can't really afford those big one-off purchases for what I believe to be some of the best training content ever made for each of them, then I would suggest joining a site like Run It Once, which has a whole range of pro levels and ability levels, and there's live focus content on there. If you aren't really interested in spending quite as much on Run It Once, I know they upped their prices since I was there as a coach. Also, a site like the Upswing's cheaper monthly stuff might also be right up your alley. I do strongly suggest getting coaches. I personally do coach. I coach a absolute lot, but I'm actually not taking on any new students of any kind until after the summer grind. And it's because the way that I'm personally am practicing and studying over the next 6 weeks is I'm actually building my own training site. So I will be doing lots of PIO and Munker work over the next 6 weeks, and we'll be building a very structured, very easy to use with lots of exploited. I'm essentially building and showing you guys my game and doing it in a very, straightforward, structured, easy to follow manner, so it's not all over the place. And so that's how I'm studying. But that being said, not
Wait,
everyone
also,
can
by
really
the
get.
way, please let us know as soon as that's happening so we can let everyone else know also.
Hope to launch by the end of May, but
Deal.
it's going to be a lot of work. So I'm hoping to launch it. But honestly, one of the best ways to study. So you join a training site, and then on top of that, you play as much as you possibly can without burning yourself out. So, like what I have, one of my students just did that I did one of my last coaching sessions between now and the end of summer is he bought Raise Your Edge, and he's going to go through Raise Your Edge between 1 and 2 times between now and the WSOP. On top of that, he's going to be playing online most days and then reviewing his own game most days. And that's how you really improve, is you study away from the table, and then to match that studying away from the table, you play as much as you possibly reasonably can without playing too many tables. You want to keep the tables number down so you can focus on making good decisions. When you're studying, you're not and playing to back up that studying, your goal isn't to play as many games as possible. It's to make as many good decisions as possible and improve on those good decisions. So if you're normally someone who 8 tables, I'd cut back to 4. If you're normally 4, I'd play 1 or 2, and if you're normally 2, I'd play 1. That's when you're actually studying, focusing on improving. And then on top of that, using a program like Poker Tracker or something similar to be able to review and go over your hand histories. And then anytime you have a question about something, post to a site. I'm actually an ambassador for a site called Cards Chat. It is one of the most friendliest, recreationally accepting places, has 200,000 plus members. It is less daunting than sites like 2plus2 can be. And, if you're a newer player trying to get help from people, that is going to be one of the friendlier places to post. And you can post, there's a section on there for everything, and they do have places for cash game hands, for tournament hands. When you have hands that you're uncertain about, post it to a site like 2plus2 or Cards Chat, or ask your friends, or look into hiring a coach. For coaches, there's so many coaches out there these days that my main suggestion just is buyer beware. Do the research that you need to do. Do your own due diligence. Make sure that there's someone that can beat the games that you want to be able to beat and have proven that they've done so over a significant sample size. Those are the type of people that you want to look into for coaches. And if you can't really find enough information about the person, either through direct reviews or through their own stats, I would not hire them as a coach. And how much you're willing to pay, that just depends on you. I think that coaches should be able to charge whatever they want to charge, and it's up to the people who hire them as a coach to find value in them. I personally try my absolute best to charge well below what I think my value is, and because of that, everyone has told me that my coaching is one of the best value out there. But that's also why when I look for students, I immediately get booked, and why I don't have time for extra or new students, in part between now and the end of the summer. On top of that, if you are a extremely serious recreational player or someone who is playing professionally or looking to play more professionally, you also have groups like Chip Layer Coaching, which I'm a coach for. It's a company started by Chance Corneth, and we do a percentage base where we offer coaching, one-on-ones, and group coaching sessions, and in return, you only pay us when you cash in tournaments. Other coaches include Justin McKeon, Simon Dedman, Daniel Strelitz, Ryan Lang, and the most well-known prominent student who now does some coaching is Alex Foxen. When Foxen first joined CLC a bit over 2 years ago, 2.5-ish years ago, something like that, he had never had his first live six-figure. Since then, he's cashed for, I don't know, like $7 million over the last 2 years. So, there are some pretty good success stories through CLC. But that's for the people who play enough volume. If you don't play enough volume, really, then my strongest suggestion is join a training site, play a lot on your own, study away from the table, do the right type of playing too, and then on top of that, find people who are at the same or similar skill levels or looking to doing the same type of studying, and study as much as you possibly can with them and discuss hands as much as you can. I still study and review and discuss hands with people pretty much every single day. And that's also how I keep my game really sharp, is I have multiple different groups of people that I can go to discuss hands with, and getting all these different viewpoints really helps solidify how I think and view about and approach the game. For the more serious studiers, programs like PioSolver and Munkersolver, which I had mentioned earlier, can also be really good ways to go from being a good mid-stakes player to a high-stakes player. That being said, they have a very, very, very steep learning curve, and they are very, very hardware intensive to use because they require very powerful computers or servers. So what a lot of people do is we rent servers, we plan ahead of time what we want to study and review, we go through it and do as much as we possibly can, and that cuts back on costs. But that is a very expensive way to study. It is also one of the hardest ways to study, and requires you to have to already essentially be a professional or be at, that type of level of, ability. And it is definitely very difficult. But, at this point in time, it's one of the only ways that I can actually really work on and improve my game to really bring it up to the next level. And it's been very, very, very useful studying those programs.
So to just turn it a little bit before I let you go, I'm sure a lot of other people listened and saw, and I really enjoyed your commentary, as did a lot of other people during Run It Up Reno. And it doesn't surprise me, as I said in the beginning, you've always been somebody who's extremely articulate and has a lot of insight. Is doing more commentary something that you would be interested in, or something that you might be willing to pursue, even with the very small, limited amount of time that you have?
Oh yeah, definitely. I love doing commentary. I've done commentary for the World Series multiple times with David Tuckman in the booth. I absolutely love working with him. I think he's one of the best in the industry right now. I've done commentary for the ACR Cage down in Costa Rica. I've done commentary for some of the Hard Rock. I think I did for one of their 10K or 25K high rollers. So I've done commentary a decent amount in the past, and I absolutely love doing it. If I could do more of it, I am always down for it. It's just a lot of fun. I just love talking about the game. I love helping people learn and grow and get better. And I feel as though commentary is one of the best ways to kind of hit a large audience. But that's also why that when I do commentary, I kind of need someone to balance me out. I'm kind of like the poker nerd. I need someone who's like the more the more color commentary and comedians, like, doing it with people like Jamie Kerstetter and Joe Stapleton. They're a perfect balance to me because they tend to, have a lot more conversations and joke around a lot. And I'm more of the serious, in-depth strategy. And having people like that balance me off is, perfect and sets up for a lot more entertaining plus educational stream, which, makes people want to stay around and watch. Yeah, I love doing commentary, and I do it at any time I get a chance to do it. And I generally don't charge anything for it. So if anyone's down to have a okay commentator, I am always in. Also, I've done some streaming and stuff in the past as well. I really enjoy doing that, but it is very taxing on me when I do it, and it's also hard for me to really justify spending time and effort doing it. That being said, once I get my site up and running, I'm going to be a little bit more interested in streaming, so I might stream a little bit more in the future. Like I might stream WCoop, which I've done in the past, stream Scoop before, and I think WCoop maybe a little bit before, but yeah. So if you guys are really enjoyed this and want to do a little bit more research into the buying and selling action, that article that I wrote is on my Twitter, pinned to the top of it. I'm leaving it up there until, through the summer, so people have an easy way to see, what they should be doing as sellers and what they should be doing as buyers, and making sure that they're protecting themselves and going about it in a, intelligent and, logical and reasonable manner. And you can buy action that's negative EV and be intelligent and reasonable about it. Buying pieces that have fun sweats of people, I think is completely and totally reasonable, and I think is, a very legitimate reason to buy. It's just when you're doing that, just make sure that you understand, what type of edge you're actually giving up. What's the actual cost of doing so, and making sure that that's reasonable to you. What is a reasonable purchase to someone? You have to decide for yourselves what that means. And I personally don't really do investing at all like that, because I view piece buying exactly as that, as investing. Very, very, very high variance investing, but definitely investing. So I personally just look for good, profitable buys. And, to really say what is a good profitable buy, there are so many different factors that go into it that I could write a very, very large article just about what I personally look for and why. So there are some guides out there, but so much of it just requires experience. It's just like investing in stock market or investing in companies. So much of it requires an experience and understanding of what the value there is in that package, and how good that player is, and how large of an edge you think they're going to run, and what type of markups relative to that. That being said, if you're trying to invest yourself, one of the key ways that I look for it is, do I very confidently believe that this person will run an edge more than 2x what they're selling at? If the answer is no, I almost never invest unless they're a very good friend of mine. And even then, I still rarely invest outside of a very small piece. Just because, part of your job as an investor is you're doing the seller a huge service by taking on that variance. And at dead minimum, as a return in that favor, they should be willing to give you a significant piece of what their edge is. It doesn't necessarily have to be half. And what that significant is can vary based off the event and the structure and how soft it is, how big of a bind it is. All those factors can impact what that means. But that's what I look for. And when I can find an edge where we're splitting it, I generally think that's going to be very fair. And then how big of a piece I buy is going to be relative to just how large of an investment is it, and those types of factors. And when you're buying and selling action in people, if you're doing it very seriously, it requires a much larger bankroll than if you were to play in that event yourself at the same percentage piece. So let's say you're going to buy into a 10K and you're going to buy that, let's say the main event. you're going to buy a piece of the 10K main event and you're going to buy 30%. So you're essentially playing a 3K via that investment, right? And in order to really play a 3K on your own with that investment, you would need a very, very significant bankroll to do it, fairly. To do it with proper bankroll management, you'd need a very significant bankroll, like well over $1 million, to do it very seriously. So, the main event obviously is a good one-off thing to buy in, but outside of that, if you're buying in like these really small, tough 10Ks or a lot of these really small fields that are more common things, like you're buying in 1500s and things like that, then make sure that you're using very proper bankroll management if you want to do it very, very seriously and truly invest. If you're not doing it with that type of fairly extreme caution, then just whatever money you invest, even in that fashion, just be completely and totally okay with losing every single cent. If you invest like that, and then honestly you are using proper bankroll management. But if you want to do it longer term, you need to use extreme caution. And this is true as a player as well. This is why I do sell action. It is why I am backed. It's not because I don't think I have a very significant edge in these events. I mean, I still am backed, and I don't really sell the 600s outside of my backers, but I'm still backed for $600 buy-in events. And in 600s lifetime, I'm running like a 500% return on investment. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't sell them. I still need a significant bankroll to be able to play them fully on my own. It just means that, I need less of a bankroll to play them fully on my own. And, whether I am backed, doesn't just come down to, can I afford this buy-in? It's, what type of overall events am I looking to play? And a lot of the stuff that I want to play is above 600. But if I'm not giving them these high value things to buy in, they won't necessarily be willing to put me into 5Ks and 10Ks and that kind of stuff. And that's what I personally desire to play and do. So I go about it in that fashion. It's so much in, buying action or being backed or selling action does come down to what are your desires and what is your focus and goals. That being said, if you want to play this game professionally or you want to invest with the profits in mind, you need to be exceptionally caution with bankroll management and making sure that you're investing in things that are very high edge. And then when you are playing games on your own and you are taking shots, that you're only doing so in the best value, softest stuff. Yeah.
You're getting so much love in the commentary still. Everyone's just like, this information is amazing. Right. And Maureen, a friend, she in fact wanted to talk a little bit about how one should go about trying to figure out their own markup.
So my rule of thumbs are it's very difficult to really say how good of an edge you are going to have and stuff. That being said, if you haven't played a lot online, it's going to be exceptionally difficult to really gauge, because one of the main ways to really gauge how well someone plays, at least for me personally, is either play against them live and to do so, on multiple occasions to really see a reasonable amount of hands, get a good idea of their table presence, most of the decisions and types that they make, or to play against them online or to review an online hand history. And even then, playing against them online and live doesn't really give you a full picture. Really, the main ways to really go through, for me personally in terms of investing, is going through an online hand history, seeing every single decision they make, and seeing what types of mistakes they make. The more mistakes I see and the more significant mistakes I see and the less experience they have with playing live, the lower markup I'm going to be willing to pay. In terms of guessing your own markup or like figuring out how to set it, it is so very difficult to do that in a fashion that is going to be exceptionally accurate. That being said, I would do it based off of your experience and based off of your profits lifetime. If you've played a decent amount live and you aren't in profit, then you probably shouldn't be selling 2 games at a markup. Or if you're not in profit but it's over a small sample, then you should be doing it based off of just how good you are, confident, like relative to the field. One of the main ways when I'm playing live to gauge, to have a vague idea as to what my edge could be, is I look at the final 27 of that field. What is it going to look like on average, the final 27? So a deep run, what is it going to look like on average? And then I rank myself among those final players. If of the final 27, I can fit myself in the top 3. And then it has a really good structure and has a really soft early stages. So something like a 1500 at the World Series. When I make the final 27 of 1500 at the World Series, I expect on average to be a top 3 player in that field. And when it has a very soft starting field and a very good structure, that means it's a tournament I'm going to have a very, very large ROI in. But if that final 27 of field is still going to be like half professionals for the final 27 or 2/3 professionals. So if you can look at a final 27 and go, there's going of this final 27, it's going to be like 18 professionals, 9 of which were pretty okay to decent, 4 of which are like good, and then or 5 of which are good, and then 4 of which are elite. And if you can't put yourself in the top 9, you probably shouldn't be selling at a very high markup. And the reason why this is because, as you run deeper and deeper in a field, you're playing against tougher and tougher players on average. And if you can't run an edge against those players, if you can't be on a table with 5 other pros and 2 or 3 recreational players and run an edge, you probably shouldn't be selling at a high markup. And one of the downsides for most people of these new structures, what the WSOP has done with these structures, for me personally and for most professionals, is wonderful. And even for recreational players, it's a great thing as well. Giving players a lot of play in these events will make them have much more enjoyable, experiences. Paying out 15% will give them much more enjoyable experiences. However, for okay pros and okay players, it's actually, especially if they're looking to have profitable experiences, that's kind of a bad thing because so the better the structure is, what happens is the average player that cashes is a lot more skilled. The average player that makes the top, 50 is a lot more skilled. The average player that final tables is a lot more skilled. And that really cuts into your edge if you're not being able to be, one of the better players as it goes along. You don't have to be the, top 3 or top 5 on average, but you need to be able to put yourself in like the top 20% of the players left at each stage to still continually run a consistent edge at that length in the field. And the tougher at each stage gets and the weaker you are compared to the average player, the lower your edge is going to be. And it gets pretty significant. For instance, there are players in like, say, the big 50 that I'd be willing to pay a 1.5 markup in, that in like, say, a normal 1500, I wouldn't pay above 1.15. And that's because that 1500 is going to be so much significantly more difficult this year than last year, with it having a 60% better structure mid to late game. Early stages, yes, this player will have a good edge. But when they get to the late stages, when they get to the final 27 of the field and they're bottom 9 in the field, they're not going to perform well with a lot of money on the line. They just won't. It's not that they won't be nervous or anything, and not necessarily they'll be nervous or whatever. They could be that too, but it's more they'll just be at such a skill disadvantage that even if they are on point in terms of emotionally and well focused and all that stuff, they're going to be making significant mistakes against that field, and that really cuts into their edge to a pretty significant degree. So the better structures, is actually a downside in terms of profitability for most people. In terms of just like getting play, it's a great thing. And most people in the past, they used to go, oh, it has a better structure, thus I have a better edge. That's only true for like the top 5% of the players in the field. For everyone else, you don't have a better edge with a better structure. On top of that, with a lot of places paying out 15%, that is a downside in terms of edge. It cuts back on your edge. One of the nice things, though, it cuts back on your variance by a significant amount too. When it's 15% paid in these really soft fields, you can run like a 30 to 35% cash rate. And even if it's only a 1.5x cash, that means like you're going to be getting back half your money invested over a significant sample size pretty regularly. And then, it takes just 1 deep run or 2 deep runs to be profitable. It cuts back on your downswings a decent amount, but because there's less money up top and because it's a lot flatter of a general structure, you also cuts back in your edge. Like a tournament that pays out 10%, that's really top heavy. A good player, let's say they have a 50% ROI. Actually, we'll call it 100% ROI. And then the tournament that pays out 15%, that's a lot flatter. They might have an 80% ROI. So it's not a big drop, but it does impact your long-term profitability, which means it impacts my willingness to pay markups. All of these things will impact my willingness to pay markups. If I think you're someone that is especially skilled and especially confident and has a lot of experience, I'm going to be willing to pay a much higher markup than I am for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, who hasn't shown to me that, either through hand history reviews or whatever, hasn't shown to be a skilled player. And even if you have shown to be a skilled player, but you don't have a lot of live experience, I'm not going to be willing to pay high markups, because these events during the summer play very uniquely. And if you don't have a lot of experience with the exact types of adjustments you need to make against, the average player and the types of people and how people view it, you are going to be at a significant disadvantage to someone who has played, full summer grind for the last, couple of years, even. A couple of years of experience is a huge advantage over someone who hasn't done it before. On top of that, I'm much more willing to pay higher markups to people I really respect. People who I know will behave themselves, like who won't get drunk nights before day twos or even before day ones. If they're going to play something, I don't want them to get drunk the night before, because if they're drunk the night before, then they will not be on their A game during that event. And when I buy markup relative to their A game, not to their C hungover or their drunk the night before game or their no sleep game. On top of that, if there's someone who is playing a full schedule but doesn't take days off at points in which they need to, that's where I have an issue with it. Like, I personally, I don't really take days off during the summer, but I am very, very careful in making sure that I don't drink. I don't, eat ridiculous meals. I don't hang out with people super late the nights before. I go between home dinner and the Rio, and that's pretty much it. I make sure I maximize my sleep. I make sure I do my best to try to be as focused to as high of a degree as I reasonably can for as long as I can. And because of that, I don't feel burned out. But the moment that I have a day where I legitimately feel the need to skip a day or to sleep in late or to take it easy on myself, I'll do so. And that's what's really important as well, to be very self-aware about stuff like that. And people I really respect are willing to, make sure that they treat the money given to them with the amount of respect and responsibility that it deserves. And in those people, I'm willing to pay higher markups, because, that is just such a powerful and important thing as well. So when you're selling to others, make sure that, and you're trying to give them good deals, make sure that, you're taking all these factors into consideration, and then doing your best to have an honest conversation with people willing to invest. That's the other thing, is the way that I set my own prices is I went to the person that I knew was going to buy the most action, and then I showed them the schedule that was going to be, and we debated and discussed every single markup. That's how we set the prices. And then once he and I did that, I sent it to the other investors, and then they bought at the markups that he dictated, which I think is the most fair way to go about it, is the person who's buying the most sets prices. And, I even said that I'm giving discounts to larger buyers. If you're someone who buys 10%, you're going to get a better price than someone who buys 5%. That's the other thing, because I know exactly what the larger buyers are taking on in terms of variance and stuff. Anyone that's willing to buy a larger piece gets a better price. They also get first action on other action I post and sell. And the people buying to the highest stake stuff also get first action on the lower stake stuff that I sell. I try to do that to give the people who have the most faith in me, the most respect and trust in me, and are putting up the most money, get the best prices, but also help the other buyers get fair prices as well. Trying to find that line between, yes, I personally want to try to charge as high of a fair markup as I possibly can, but my own opinions about everything won't necessarily be accurate. So having someone else that really keeps me in line, debates with me, and then sets a price that they're comfortable and happy with, I think that's one of the most fair ways to do it. And all of these things are very arbitrary. Like, I might not actually exactly know I definitely don't exactly know, but my guesses might be way off. But that's why, anytime I'm buying and selling action, I try to sell at prices that I believe or buy at prices or sell at prices I believe are below half of what my what I believe my ROI is. That way, even way if I am way off, it's very unlikely that I'm off by to such a ridiculous degree that I'm not giving them a profitable investment. And doing it like that enables me to have investors who have invested in me for years and years and years, and enables me to consistently sell action and playing the stuff that I really want to play. Because when I am selling, they know I'm not trying my hardest to upsell or anything like that. I'm putting at what I believe to be fair. We debate it, we discuss it, we set prices, we go forward. And I think that that's like one of the best ways to go about in terms of being in the industry long term and staying in this industry long term.
I still have so many questions, but normally
Fire away.
I only talk to the guests for 30 minutes, but this has just been super interesting, and everyone in the chat is like, super excited about all this info. So I wanted to ask,
Yep.
Christy Arnett last summer, she sold a big
Mm-hmm.
package, bigger than she normally does. And I had some conversations with her where she had a lot of anxiety, I guess, or stress.
Yep.
And not that she felt like she gave fair prices and even good prices for her buyers, but
Right.
that also when the summer started going bad for her, or when you said very clearly, you could just,
Yep.
you're not gonna win most
Right.
of the time. I get it. But if you could speak a little bit to if you've ever had that experience, or some ways to kind of get yourself out of when actually you feel so guilty because the people you love and respect the most are the people who are the most invested in
Right.
you.
So that's the other thing is, when people who invest in me, they're either people that already know what risks they're taking on, or when they're newer buyers, like they're newer friends that haven't really bought action in the past, I make sure that they know that I could and will at times just straight brick the summer. And, when they know up front that whatever money they're investing in me, they're essentially just putting it on fire in a profitable fashion. They're setting it on fire, but they are setting it on fire. And, when they're okay with that from the start, then I have no anxiety about any of it. My goal during the summer is to play the absolute best that I reasonably can. That's it. That's my only goal. And I don't always necessarily do that. I do make mistakes. I'm human. I fuck up in spots, and it happens. So it's not about like when I do mess up to just go, oh, hey, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I make that mistake, and fix it? That's it. And when I do mess up, to be hard enough on myself to go, hey, that was a mistake, and to be honest with myself, but to not be so hard on myself that, I'm causing myself more anxiety and pain and frustration than I already have via messing up. That doesn't help you. What helps you is you mess up, you go, wow, that was not good. In fact, I really punted there. Shit. Okay, why did I punt there? What led me to, to doing that mistake? Oh, it was because of these factors, or I misjudged it because of these reasons. And honestly, actually, great example. I was, playing Run It Up Reno this past weekend, and some people I knew had played hands that they thought that they punted, and one of them actually was, and I was like, yeah, that was a mistake. This was really awful. You shouldn't have done this. And then I explained why. One of my best friends who I coach a lot, so I'm very, very, very open and honest about it. And the other two hands that I really discussed that really brought this to mind, they played them both perfectly, and they just ran into it. And that happens. That's part of the game. That, like, great example was during the Colossus last year. I am infamously known for firing 12 entries and not cashing. I fired the absolute most entries that you possibly could. Not only did I not cash, which I was the only person to fire more than 10 and not cash. There was one person who fired 11 and cash, and there was one person who fired 12 and cash multiple times, I think. Not only did I fire 12 and didn't cash, I fired 12 entries without getting past late registration on one. Not one. And I did not punt in any of them to any way, shape, or form. In fact, the closest one was I actually bet called the turn with Queen Jack High, which I know sounds like a punt. I had Queen Jack High, no draw, but I picked up on a tell on this guy, and I knew 100% he was bluffing, and I actually guessed out almost his exact two cards. And, when I have like a read like that, I'm just going to follow it and trust it. And they drilled it. And, but I, put it in with like 70% equity with Queen Jack High. But like, the thing is that I could have been wrong, and that read could have been wrong, and they could have just had a really strong hand. And I still would have been okay with it as long as I was confident I did it for the right logical reasons. And that's all I really care about is, if I'm going to trust a read in a spot, that I'm trusting it for the right reasons. If I'm going to make any play in a situation, as long as I did it for the right reasons, even if I like read the range slightly wrong or whatever, I'm still going to be okay with the decision in general. That being said, I might have made a mistake in how I viewed the range. And then I'll ask other people what they think about it. I'll ask, my friends and stuff. And if everyone's like, "Hey Ryan, you fucked this up. Why'd you do this?" And I'll be like, "Okay, I fucked this up." And then I'll look at, I'll reanalyze what I looked at that made me make that mistake. And then I'll just fix it. And I would say, like, even though that this is really a huge grind, I would honestly say that my average time spent during breaks, outside of going to the bathroom and walking along to the bathrooms, is I'm constantly talking hands with people, and that keeps my brain nice and sharp. And I'm also like getting people's opinions on different things consistently, so I'm constantly having a huge influx of different viewpoints and thought process and stuff about all these different types of situations, which gives me a much more honest and realistic view of how I should approach situations and the adjustments I make. And whether I do consistently well or don't has no impact as whether, in fact, it says very little about how well I'm playing. It does. Like, I could brick this summer and it could be the best I've ever played, and I could just straight brick. And that would be a rare thing, but like, I've had 3 summers where I went 0 for 20 before I cashed. I had one summer where I cashed at the start of the summer, and then I bricked the rest of the summer. Just straight brick the rest of the summer. And I was playing smaller binds and stuff, but like, if you go to my Hendon Mob, you'll see a couple different summers where between like May 25th and July 15th, I've won 2 or 3 cashes. In fact, I know of a summer where Shannon Shore, who has been absolutely crushing lately, had a summer where he went like 0 for 35 or whatever.
Oh,
and like,
that hurts.
He might not have been playing his A+ game at the end of it or whatever. And maybe I wasn't playing the A+ during some of those summers as well. But like, I don't think I was punting. I definitely wasn't as good as what I am now. But I can, like, last year when I went 0 for 12 in the Colossus, and I had a couple other stretches there where I was just bricking in pretty awful situations. The double stack, I actually fired 8 into that. I didn't punt a single one of those. I wasn't even taking thin edges. It's just, it happens. And that's also why I sell so much action, because that is a common type of thing to have occur. And when I'm playing these games, it's also why I sell action and why I'm still backed, because when I see a good profitable investment, I don't want to just fire it once and be done with it. I want to be able to spend as much time and effort as possible to make money in that event. And obviously, each entry that I put into it, the later and later I do, my edge is smaller. And sometimes I'm firing these situations where I'm fully backed, or if I sell action, I give discounts and stuff to these super late registrations, but where I might be buying in at 25 big blinds. I might only have like a 20% ROI, and a 600 when I'm doing that. I'm sure it's higher, but I might be taking these really thin edges and these really high variance situations. And part of why I'm backed and sell all this action is so I can do that. So when I brick, that I'm completely and totally okay with it. But even if you're someone that only registers at the start of every single tournament, going 0 for 20 shouldn't be a shocking thing. It should be, an annoyance, but it shouldn't be, oh my God, did I play terribly? It should just be, honestly look at how you're playing, honestly look at your mindset. If you're playing your absolute best and in as good of a mindset as you can possibly be in, you're doing right by your investors. Like, people, when they invest in you, shouldn't be going, I'm going to make money off you. They should be going, I want you to play your best. I want you to put yourself in the best situations. And I want you to do your best to make us money. And if it happens, cool. If you brick, okay. That's what I knew would be a possibility. And I think when you're selling to people, that if you have these honest conversations with them and that they know exactly what they're risking, you should feel no anxiety about however your summer goes.
I love it.
And having that mindset also enables me to brick. And then when I'm 0 for 25 this summer and down quote unquote 100 grand, and I fire entry 26, I am still going to be playing my A game. And that's what sets apart having that type of mindset, is I can just completely keep bricking and I won't change how I'm playing. And that's the most important aspect of it, is that if you can convince yourself that this is how you're supposed to think about and approach it. And it's tough. It requires a lot of consistent work to keep yourself in that mindset. But if you do that, then you should be very happy no matter how the summer goes.
Ugh, yeah, you're just always a breath of fresh air, I have to tell you.
Thank you.
And
It took a long time.
it's just you
A
have
lot of work.
so much insight. And actually, for those who are listening, and for those who watch later, or for those who are going to be listening to the podcast this weekend, we actually did an interview last year at some point. I want to say during the Colossus maybe, or some event.
Yep.
which you were firing a couple of bullets, and we talked a little bit about where you find that value and how many bullets of value is worth it to you. Right. So you guys definitely check that out if you want to. And then before I let you go, let everybody know where they can find you. I know you're not taking new students right now, but yep. Post WSOP and also on your socials and all the other platforms. Where can we get at you?
Yep. So on Twitter, this is what I use the most. In fact, I post hand pulls and stuff pretty regularly on there that I know are pretty well liked. It is at Protential, like potential, but with an R, Protential MN as in Minnesota. So Protential MN. I post regularly on there anytime I'm playing. I post interesting and quirky and weird and fun hands. In fact, I will be playing a Win 600 over the next few days, hopefully just tomorrow and Sunday. But if I have to unload the clip, I will do so. And I will be posting hands and situations from that. And then during the summer, I post updates for day twos and I post interesting hands. So I try to be pretty active on there. Also, as I said before, I'm working on a training site. I hopefully will have it soft launched by the end of May, if possible. That is the goal, but whether or not it'll happen, who knows? At the very latest, will be launched in August, and either way, we'll be doing a full launch in September. And I am very excited about it and very excited about what I will be offering, and it will be hopefully very well received, which I'm going to do my best to make it the best value and the best training site for the money that you can buy. And I hope everyone else agrees with me. And if they don't, well, then I'll price it down to make sure that they do. That is my goal, is to offer as much value to the community and also try to make some money running a business. Obviously, that is, anytime someone's selling stuff like that, their goal is to make money. And honestly, I am very upfront about all of this. And while I do want to offer value, I'm also wanting to make money. And, I can do so in a very ethical way, and that's how I want to run it. The person that I actually respect right now the most in the community is Phil Galfond. And, that's how I want to try to, that's what I want to try to emulate as a player, as a person, as a business owner, as an investor, someone who everyone agrees uphold themselves with the utmost, ethics and who cares deeply about the community. And I really do. And I really do try my best. I might not always succeed, but I do try my best. And anytime I do make a mistake, I fix it. And I think that as long as everyone approaches things in that type of manner, that the poker community will keep growing in the type of way that is a great way for it to grow. And that's what my goal is always. And I hope that my Twitter shows that. And I hope that you guys really enjoy following me on there and enjoy learning and growing through me within this community.
Well, I would say I, of course, adore Phil also, but it's very high praise coming from you. And I'm sure he will hear. And I actually was just writing something about this because I had some guys from a college approach me who started a poker club, and they were working to do a charity poker stream. And so many people jumped on board from the poker community as soon as I tweeted out. And there's just these constant, someone is just giving their kidney to someone's mom that they met at a poker table. I just feel there's these constant affirmations of what an incredible community the poker community is. And especially in a space where I think a lot of people would not normally perceive it to be as such. So I feel grateful.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I don't know why I'm frozen all the time. I pay so much for internet and it just doesn't do anything for me. But when we post the actual podcast version of this show, there will be links to every site that Ryan mentioned. There will be links to his own site, his own Twitter. We'll put on the Kenny Hallaert Spacey FCB Twitter, all the things that Ryan mentioned. So it should be a really good sort of comprehensive place for you guys to find for anybody who's asking for any links or anything that they missed in the chat. We will get it out to you. Thank you guys so much for joining and for all your questions. I appreciate it. And Ryan, you're just a total hero. This is literally probably the longest podcast I've ever done, and I just I could have just kept going for 5 more hours. Everyone in the chat's just saying thank you for so much information.
Well, if you want to do a part 2 right before the summer, let me know, and I'd be happy to, fill in anything that we didn't get to discuss today. So thank you once again.
And we're going to be doing videos this summer. Like, don't even try to get out of it. I know you've got to talk hands on your breaks, but sometimes you got to talk hands with me.
I'm always down for that. I will talk to you later. Thanks everyone for listening in. I hope you guys really enjoyed it.